And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick and Alix Steel here to help take you through the closing bell. It's our global simulcast. It begins right now with Scarlet Fu in the TV studio, Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec in our radio booth, as well as all of our audiences across all of our platforms, including our audience joining us on YouTube. We are going to parse the most crucial moments of the market today here. But of course, we have to focus a little bit on politics on the heels of that big debate last night. Former President Donald Trump now holding a rally. Let's go out to see what he has to say.
And we have to take it back from that party. That's an evil party, despite the fact that crooked Joe Biden spent the entire week at Camp David resting, working, studying. He studied very hard. He studied so hard that he didn't know what the hell he was doing. He got the debate rules that he wanted. He got the date that he wanted. He got the network that he wanted. With the moderates he wanted. No amount of rest or rigging could help him defend his atrocious record. It's not defensible. I don't care who you were. You could be the late, great Clarence Darrow. Has anyone ever heard of Clarence Darrow? He was known as quite a good debater. Not as good as your governor, but that's okay. Hello, Governor. I can't miss this guy in the crowd. But his son's much better looking than him. Joe Biden's problem is not his age. It's not his anything.
Former President Donald Trump holding a post-debate rally down there in Virginia. You can watch that in full on your Bloomberg terminal by typing in Live Go. But we do want to get back to the markets here as we close out the day, the week, and of course, the quarter here in the United States. The Dow Jones Industrial Average going to close out the day on the back foot, down about 0.1%, roughly about 41 points lower. We should point out that it's higher on the month by about 1%, but lower on the quarter by about 2%. The S&P 500 lower by 0.4% on the day, but still good enough here to solidify what's roughly about a 4% gain for the quarter. The NASDAQ Composite down 126 points or 0.7% on the day, still higher by 8% on the quarter. And the Russell 2000, that was actually, believe it or not, your outperformer on the day, up by about 4 to 0.5%. But on a quarterly basis as well as a monthly basis, that is your primary laggard there. Carol Massar, the Russell 2000 down 3.6% here over the last 3 months.
Yeah, that's significant downside. Maybe some concerns about the outlook, certainly for smaller businesses. Having said that, if I take a look at the S&P 500, back to the big caps we go. And you've got almost an even split here, Scarlett. 266 names gaining on this last trading day of June for the month, for the quarter, and for the first half of 2024. 236 to the downside. So kind of an even split there.
All right, let's take a look at the IMAP because some of the biggest sectors in the S&P 500 by weighting are the biggest decliners today. So that's why the IMAP is pretty much red with a couple of green slices. Communication services, consumer discretionary, and utilities all dropping by at least 1%. It should be noted that utilities have been the biggest laggards in the month of June. All the communication services were the best performers or among the best performers in June and the second quarter. As for the gainers, REITs, energy, and financials, but not by a whole lot.
All right, guys, a lot of red and green there. So, all right, here's some of the individual gainers, if I may. This is the number one gainer in the S&P 500. Synchrony Financial pretty much finishing just off its highs of the day, so up about 6.7%. Baird analyst Brendan Crowley initiating coverage on the company with an outperform rating. He cited its position as the number one domestic private label credit card platform with tenured large retailer partnerships and an experienced management team. So some outperformance in that name. Infinera Corporation also, their shares soaring up almost 20% at their highs, finishing just below the 16% gain mark. Nokia agreeing to buy the maker of digital optical telecommunications equipment for $2.3 billion. So some deal flow on this Friday. And then I just went to the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index because I was looking for some outperformance. And I did see earlier in the day, almost all of these names were higher in this session at its highs today. The SOX was up almost 3%, guys, finishing the day with a 0.9% gain in today's session. Didn't see any specific
you picked
news.
An index? Isn't that cheating?
No. I think it's inclusive.
It's thematic.
I'm an inclusive.
Thematic.
It's thematic. Thank you very much for that. All right, off to Tim we go.
All right, we got to start with shares of Nike. I mean, the worst performer in the S&P 500 on a percentage basis. In fact, the worst day ever for Nike. It shed a fifth of its market value, now trading at 2020 levels, falling 20% today. Shares sank after the company's full-year outlook missed expectations. It got investors worried about waning demand and then also rising competition from people who are buying Hoka's, On, Adidas, even old rivals like Adidas. Nike also said they saw revenue declining in the mid-single digits in the company's current fiscal year, which began this month. Puts pressure on Nike's management team led by John Donahoe, the CEO there. Also, keep an eye on shares of Apple. They were higher earlier in the session. This after we learned that iPhone shipments in China rose 40% in May. Smartphone shipments climbing more than 13%, but foreign brands, Apple comprises the vast majority, grew almost 4 times faster. This according to Bloomberg News calculations of official data. We did see shares jump initially, but fell today by 1.6%. And then DJT is the ticker. Trump Media and Technology fell 11%. Again, higher early in the session, jumping nearly 9% after that presidential debate last night. Shares then ended up moving lower later in the session, falling around 11%, Alex.
All right, let's go to the bond market here. Really interesting price action right now. You're seeing the sell-up really accelerate as U.S. equity markets closed up. You now have that 10-year up by about 13 basis points. Same with the 30-year. Even the 2-year's getting in on the action, up by 3 basis points. We had the yields hit the lows of the session right after that economic data came out around 8:30, and then it reversed course, sending equities a little bit lower, kind of struggling, and yields really popping higher there, Scar.
Yeah, let's go back to Virginia, where former President Trump is speaking at a rally. Of course, it comes on the heels of last night's presidential debate, following which President Joe Biden said he's committed to winning the election and brushing aside calls to step aside. Let's take a listen.
We can really survive 5 more months. This is the most dangerous time in the history of our country, in my opinion, and we have a transition period because hopefully there has to be a transition. We've never been so close to World War III before. And if it happens, it will be a war like no other. This because of the threat of certain types of weapons. We don't even want to mention the word, but because of the type of weapons that you're talking about today, and I know them better than anybody. You know, I built our military. I totally rebuilt our military. I know more about weapons than just about anybody. And when you look at the incredible destructive power of these weapons, this will be a war like no other. This will not be 2 army tanks running against each other and shooting. This is going to be something the likes of which we've never seen. And we have a man who's grossly incompetent heading up our nation. And he's competing against Putin and President Xi of China and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. He's competing against people that are at the top of their game. And he was never really at the top of his game. He was never very good. But now he's really not good. Last night was a defeat not only for Biden, but for the entire radical left Democrat Party and the fake news media who have been lying to the American people as our country was being destroyed. The fake news media, look at all of them back there. Look at all of them. That's a lot of cameras. That's a lot of cameras. That's a lot of camera power. The Joe Biden on stage yesterday was the same Joe Biden who gave us open borders, crushing inflation, rampant crime, 2 new wars, a disastrous Afghanistan embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, and the international humiliation. Think of it, one after another, international humiliation, one after another. Nobody respects him. Foreign leaders don't respect him. You know, we put up $124 billion more given to Ukraine than Europe. Now, Europe is a lot closer. We have a thing called an ocean in between us, right? So no matter how you cut it, it's got to be more important. Why is it that we're not equalized? Why is it that they put up $124 billion, our people, these people in Washington that don't know what the hell they're doing? You know, I stopped it with NATO. We were spending almost 100% of the money for NATO. And I went in my first meeting, I realized, I said, you know, they're not paying their bills. They're delinquent. My second meeting, I said, you got to pay. And they said, well, what would happen if we don't? Then we won't defend you against Russia. And the next day, money came in by the billions.
All right, of course, that is former President Donald Trump at a rally in Virginia, of course, coming after last night's debate. And that is a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals, the closing bell. Folks, we will see you again, same time, same place next week.